the Southern Aurora, one of several luxurious cross-country trains of Australia. It ran from Melbourne to Sydney alongside its older sister train, the Spirit of Progress. It was introduced on the 16th of April 1962. This train had brand new, high-speed stainless steel carriages that were made to be more crash-worthy than normal carriages. But would they stand the ultimate test in a head-on collision? 7th of February 1969. It was one of the hottest days of the year and was soon going to get even hotter. The Southern Aurora was heading down from Sydney with S-Class S316 Sir Andrew Clark and several carriages including LAN carriages 2345 and 2368, BCS 2355, PHN 2370, NAM carriages 2335, 2336, 2339 and 2343, not in that particular order, and several other carriage classes such as an MHN car at the rack, all built in 1962. The train was heading from Albury Station. It was crewed by 52-year-old Jack Bowden, 30-year-old fireman Melvin Coulthard, and guard William Wire. It was heading towards the loop at Benalla, waiting for a freight train to pass it. The freighter was a northbound train that had left Melbourne at 1:25 a.m. with S317 Sir John Monash, S314 Sir John O'Shaughnessy, and 22 wagons, mostly containing new automobiles, with the rolling stock itself also quite new. It was crewed by Lawrence Roosevelt and Arnfried Brendeck, with Lawrence driving and Arnfried as a relief. The train controller all the way back in Melbourne, which was controlling the loop, was Frank McDonald. The Aurora and freighter were to pass at Benalla at 6:44 a.m. The freight train was to enter the loop at 6:15. However, at 6:30 a.m., neither train had arrived. Since both were running late, they were rescheduled to pass at Violet Town instead. The goods train was expecting a long wait at Violet Town, as the Southern Aurora was thundering down the line at 110 kilometers an hour. But then, around 10 kilometers before the loop, driver Bowden suffered a heart attack and, unbeknown to anyone on board, died at the controls. The freight train crew was soon going to enter the loop, and it saw the Aurora ahead, but thought that it was completely safe as it was going to slow down, as planned. The fireman of the Aurora goes down to the nose of the locomotive to fill the electric kettle with water, preparing to have a cup of tea at Violet Town while waiting for the freight train. He heard the locomotive rumble over the points to the loop, and to his horror, the train had passed a red signal and was about to crash into the other train. He shouted about it to stop the train and ran into the engine room to take shelter. Meanwhile, from the freight train, the crew thought nothing was going wrong. It slowed down from 80 kilometers to 30 kilometers to safely enter the crossing loop, however then realized the Aurora would not slow down for him. He then opened the cab door and helped Brendeck to jump out before he himself escaped into the engine room. And then, disaster struck. The trains plow into each other at 172 kilometers an hour, with the sheer speed enough to send the locomotives and cars into the air as the two leading carriages telescoped into the rear of the locomotive, which diesel fuel was leaking out of, causing a fire to break out at the epicenter of the crash. Two other carriages rode over the wreckage, suspending them 9 meters in the air. Photographer Kenneth Williams was riding in the Aurora and took these coloured photos just 5 minutes after the disaster and was later paid compensation from Victorian Railways. 9 people died and 117 people were injured. The people who died were the drivers of both trains, an electrician, a conductor, and 5 passengers. Local CFA, County Fire Authority, volunteers witnessed this crash and instantly began organising a fire response. At first, the Aurora Urban Fire Brigade, the nearest major fire service, was not told accurate information on the crash, with it first being described as a truck collision, then a truck and train collision, but they only found out it was a giant train crash when they arrived. Over 100 firefighters then responded to the accident. It was super quick for the investigators to find the smoking gun, the driver having a heart attack. While the area was cleaned up with repairs, even into the 1980s some debris from the locomotives was still around. In the end, several of the freight cars, 70 of Southern Aurora coaches, as well as S316 and S314 were damaged beyond repair and scrapped. S317 was repaired and put back into service in the Victorian Railway's paint scheme. However, in 1982, was involved in the Barna-Waffa train collision, killing the 2 people in the cab. Interestingly, it was more damaged in this crash than at Violettown, despite the 1969 wreck being worse. Afterwards, its nameplate Sir John Monash was removed in 1983 and the locomotive was transferred to V-Line and briefly repainted orange before switching to the more common orange and grey livery, before later being acquired in 1994 by the Great Northern Railway and later acquired by the Southern Short-Haul Railroad, and it still operates to this day. The other S-Class locomotives were either scrapped or sold to private freight operators. NAM 2339, NAM 2343, LAN 2345, LAN 2368, BCS 2355, and PHN 2370 were damaged beyond repair and scrapped, with replacement cars taking their place, while the other destroyed carriages getting their own replacements. A memorial stone was made at the site on the 25th anniversary, and in 2018 it was thoroughly expanded to a full garden, with the crowning jewel being preserved Southern Aurora carriage NAM 2337 in preparation for the 50th anniversary of the disaster. While the carriage itself was restored on the outside, with its graffiti being cleaned off, the interior is completely gutted and empty. Southern Aurora itself would run for several more years until 1986, when it and its sister train, the Spirit of Progress, were replaced by a Sydney-Melbourne Express, before becoming an XPT service, with several carriages being preserved. The Southern Aurora, however, will be coming back under a joint operation of the Seymour Heritage Railway, Transport Heritage New South Wales, Cruise Express, as well as many other companies as a cruise journey from the 9th of February 2020, with a trip on the Southern Aurora from Albury to Sydney happening on the final day. Unfortunately for any of the viewers out there, by the time this video comes out, and by the time of writing and recording, it's too late to book tickets. It's been 51 years, and deadly train collisions have still occurred, such as the Hines Hill collision, the Glenbrook crash, or even the Jumper King crash that happened only a couple of months ago. But it is certain that the 1969 Violettown collision, also remembered as the Southern Aurora disaster, will never be forgotten.